Hello lovely people! Today we're going to talk about a book, and the book we're going to talk about is 1,000 Nights by E.K. Johnston.
Sophie Vlogs.
I talked about this book in my October favourites video because I just bought it and I was in awe of how pretty it was and I was very excited about it. I have now read it, so I'm going to kind of review it. I whizzed through this book in a couple of days because I didn't want to take it travelling with me in case I ruined how pretty it was. So I essentially just went to bed really early every night for the whole time I was reading it so that I could sit in bed and just have some alone time with the book, which sounds kind of creepy, but literally it was just, I didn't want to break any of it, but I also really wanted to read it. It's a similar setup to 1001 Nights. You have the king, Lomelkin, and I'm really sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but he has a nasty habit of marrying girls and then killing them, so there's an agreement set up. He travels around each of the villages in the desert and he takes one girl from them and he's not allowed to return to that village until he's gone around the full cycle. Our protagonist wants to protect her sister, who is widely acknowledged to be the most beautiful girl in that village, so she offers herself to Lomelkin. She gets herself all done up and she goes with him willingly. And in a similar way, each night he comes to her and she tells him stories and she manages to survive day by day. I feel like this has been a pretty shoddy book summary, but I'm just going to go into talking about why I liked it now, because screw it, I did, I loved it, it was so good guys, it's a really good book, you should check it out. The most dangerous love story ever told, an evocative tale of love, mystery and magic that would not feel out of place if Scheherazade herself were telling it, and perhaps she is. I initially have one tiny bone to pick, because the most dangerous love story ever told, I get that. I get why that's like the front tagline, but I disagree with it. I don't really think this is a love story as that line would suggest. By which I mean, one of the things I really loved about this book was that it's not a romantic love story, but it is a story about love. Our main character's primary motivation is love, but it's not love in a romantic sense. It's all the other kinds of love that you experience. It's love for her sister that makes her want to protect her sister. It's love for her family that makes her think that she's more expendable to them than her sister, so she'll take her place. It's love for her people. She sees the injustice that's being done to them, and she sees the sacrifice that each village has to make, and she wants to stop it. She wants to find a way to survive, to stop other girls from being taken. And it's love for where she lives, it's love for her country. A lot of the stories that are told by Scheherazade are quite fantastical and otherworldly almost, whereas all the stories that this person tells are domestic stories. They're stories of her sister, they're stories of the normal lives of women, the stories of just living in the desert, what desert life is like. But they're just as special as stories of fantastical, otherworldly things, and there's still a power to them. I've said before that I really like the relationship between storytelling and power, and this plot setup is one that definitely explores that. But I like the role that love has to play in that as well, because the power of her storytelling is fueled by her love for the things that she's telling stories about. She doesn't need to tell stories about things that are fantastic and involve a lot of imagination, because the love she has for the day-to-day life of living and existing where she is, that love really comes through in the stories and makes them interesting. And I thought that was really interesting. There definitely is an exploration of the gender divide in the society that they live in. A lot of her power comes from being a woman and engaging in the activities that are associated to women in the culture she lives in. When she's in the palace, she spends a lot of time with the women weaving, and weaving becomes a way in which she can tap into her potential and her power. And it's the same with dressing. She becomes friends with the women, and engaging in those sorts of activities helps protect her in a way. She has henna applied to her every night before she sees Lomelkin and before like special occasions and stuff. And she talks to the woman who does the henna, and she learns all about the ways that the different designs that are being put on her are helping to protect her, and she draws power from them, and it helps her feel more secure. So all of the ways that she manifests her power and expresses it are tied up in activities that are associated with being female in this society. And I thought that was very interesting. One of the reasons that Lomelkin is so interested in her is because he doesn't have access to that sphere of power. Lomelkin has power of his own, and I'm going to leave it there and not explain that too much. But the way his power manifests itself is in the masculine sphere as it exists in that society. He finds it very easy to manipulate the men and to understand their motivations and to play on that. And that's how he's able to achieve what he wants, because he gets that understanding. And I think one of the reasons why our protagonist intrigues him initially is because she has access to a form of power that he doesn't, and to a sphere that he doesn't understand, and that intrigues him and he wants that. I'm going to leave that point there because I don't want to get too spoilery. Essentially, the reason why I like this book is because all of the tropes and ideas that are my favourite things to read about are in this. So you've got storytelling and its connection to power, and you've got ideas of belief. And when I say ideas of belief, I mean that idea that you believing in something imbues it with power. This is something which is in Small Gods by Terry Pratchett and American Gods by Neil Gaiman, and in other things as well, but those are the two main ones that I really love. And this does that as well. It explores that idea of believing in something, giving it power, and being able to draw upon that and not exploit that, because that's not the right word, but use it. And that's something that is very interesting. Whilst the narrative is nothing like Terry Pratchett's narrative, if you enjoyed Small Gods, I think you would really enjoy this because of that connection and because of the exploration of that theme. I think that would be interesting to you, whoever you are. As well as exploring certain themes that I find really super interesting, this book actually really reads very well. I found it a very enjoyable experience to read it. Having established that I don't view this as a romantic love story, I did still find the relationship between our protagonist and Lou Malkin very interesting because of the power struggles within it. This whole review just sounds like I'm obsessed with the idea of power. I swear I'm not obsessed with power. I do just find it very interesting in literature to see how it is dealt with and who holds the power in the narrative and that sort of thing. Lou Malkin has power, our protagonist has power, they're different powers, but they're kind of linked, and the negotiating of that was extremely interesting. I'm going to leave it there because I don't really want to spoil anything. If any of the topics that I've mentioned in this review are things that interest you or intrigue you, then I would absolutely really recommend you check this book out, because it is such a wonderful book. This is definitely one of my favourite books now, and I know I say that about books a lot on this channel, but this one, like, I super duper mean. Sometimes I read books and I'm like, I love this book so much, and then time passes and I'm like, oh, I think I was just like infatuated with the book. I see clearly now that I've had time away from it. But this one I don't see that happening with, because this was just a wonderful experience. And there is so much more goodness to it than I have mentioned, but I would like to leave some of the mystery for you to discover yourself. It's a really easy read, it's a super enjoyable read, it's a beautiful read, in case you'd forgotten. Look how pretty it is. My poor heart. Let me know if you've read this book as well. I would really, really love to hear your thoughts. Or if any of the things I've talked about liking this book, you think of other book recommendations, then please let me know, because I'm always on the lookout. I hope you're having a really, really lovely day, and I will see you next week. Actually attempting to be a booktuber and talk about the books rather than just like be like, oh my god, the books, man, the books. That's gonna be a thumbnail, I hope. Otherwise I'm just gonna look deranged with a book. Sophie, didn't fucking plan any of it. Every time, like, I'm gonna plan and I'm like, I haven't planned. How to say it in a non-spoilery fashion. My neighbours can see me. Let's make the use of the natural light. Oh, forgot that I've got neighbours who can see me right now. Great. Have a nice day. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm in love with a book. Story of my life.